Hello, I'm back. So I have to apologize. I accidentally ended the last video. I didn't mean to. I wanted to have the final shot of the cooked beans plated and ready to eat, but I ended the video and I don't edit videos. I pause it and cook and go back to filming and pause and cook and go back to filming, but I'm not doing any editing, so I have to just start over and do a part two. So this is part two of making black beans from scratch, and this is the finished product. So my beans are done. They are fully cooked. My onions are nice and tender. I don't know if you can see how clear they are. So this is where I like them to be. You can't see any of their red color in my onions anymore. I might put the lid back on and allow this to sit for like another 10 minutes or so because I think I want to soften these onions up just a little bit more. Let me see. I want to see if it'll just be smashed and go away. So I think I want to allow some of the residual heat to do some more cooking. To just help the onions to get a little bit more soft, because I like, as I said earlier, when I bite into my onions, I want them to kind of just disappear in my mouth. I don't want to chew on onions. I don't want them to be a part of the dish. I just want the benefit of the onions flavor in my dish. I don't want to chew on onions for this particular meal. So yeah, I will cover this and give it maybe another 10 minutes with the residual heat cooking the onions a little more thoroughly, just so they're soft enough for my liking. Again, I want to not have to chew them once I'm eating this dish. So I want to also make a correction. I mentioned earlier that I was going to give the beans about 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes to cook after I added my onions, and I actually got distracted and I forgot about them for a little bit, and I actually gave them an hour. I think they cooked for an extra 50 minutes to an hour instead of 20 to 30 minutes. So just to give you, accurate information in case you want to cook this for you to get the same consistency, I want to make sure I give you the right information. So the beans cooked for an additional, I think 50 minutes to an hour after I added the onions. And that would be a total of, I believe, 3 hours, a little over 3 hours of cooking time, because I initially was going to turn it off at about 2.5 hours. So I'm hoping I got that correct. But again, I just want to give you correct information so that if you cook this, you have a realistic expectation for the amount of time it takes to bring it to this point. Now, I like the amount of liquid that's in here. And I did add a cup of water, as I stated that I probably would. After I put the onions and the salt and the pepper, I added 1 cup of water just so that I would have this consistency and this amount of liquid after the onions had time to cook, because I knew that I would lose some more water during the cooking process, and I wanted to keep up right about the amount of water that I had when I put the onions in. So I think this is about where I wanted it. You can see how thick the broth is. Let me show you. Okay, so when I eat this, I eat it multiple different ways. One of the ways that I eat it is just like this by itself. I'll take several spoonfuls and have it in a cup, which is what I'll do today. Sometimes I'll do a bowl full and eat it like a soup, just like this by itself, just a bowl full of beans. And I also eat these black beans with sweet potatoes. Sometimes I might do that tomorrow or some later point during the week. I might cook some sweet potatoes to eat them with. And when I do the sweet potatoes, I usually steam my sweet potatoes separately. I cut them up, I steam them in large chunks, put them in my bowl, and add the beans right on top. So this has a nice heavy thick stew or a soup-like consistency. So I put this right over the sweet potatoes, and I'll eat it like, you know, like a stew. Also, another thing that I do with these beans, once they've been cooked as they are now, there is no oil, by the way, no butters, no creams, nothing has been added to this. It's just the water, the beans, onions, salt, and black pepper. That's it. So to add a little bit of fat to it, and which does change the flavor profile when you add, you know, any type of oils or butter. It changes the way that you know, food tastes in your mouth. It changes the consistency when there's liquid involved. It thickens your food when you add oils and fats and butters, which I don't use any type of butters, but I do use olive oil and avocado oil in my cooking. So what I'll do with this, if I want to eat it, say with some rice, I will saute some onions. Again, my red onions, my staple. I use them for everything. I'll saute some red onions with some olive oil and add my beans to that. So I'll take maybe 4 cups of this, add that to some sauteed red onions, and that olive oil that I use to saute the onions will thicken this even more. So this broth will become thicker, and then I'll add this over rice. So that's some of the different ways that I eat this dish. But again, I like to eat it just like this by itself or with sweet potatoes. And I also use this when I do nachos. So if I want to do some nachos, I usually use corn chips. I add the beans on top. I do avocados. I do tomatoes. I do corn, kind of like a homemade chipotle. And so it's just some of the different ways to use these beans. I mix it up. I eat beans every day. I try to. I miss some days here and there. But if you're on a plant-based diet, beans are the #1 way to get protein from plants. They are, beans have the highest amount of protein of all plants. So, you know, eating fruits and other types of vegetables, you know, obviously has lots of nutritional value, and there's tons of benefits from all fruits and vegetables. But in particular, if you're on a plant-based diet, you need to be really careful and intentional about making sure you get enough protein in your diet, in your meal throughout the day. So I use beans as my main source of protein, and I try to eat 1 to 2 meals at least a day that includes beans. So this is an every week thing for me. I make a pot of black beans at least once a week, and I have other beans that I use, mostly lentil. And I kind of alternate my meals between my lentils and my black beans throughout the week each day. Whichever one I might have for breakfast, I might have a different one for lunch. So those are just some little tips of how I use my black beans and the benefits of, you know, black beans in your diet when you're on a plant-based diet. I am going to let this sit for another maybe 10 minutes or so, and then I'm going to serve some up in a cup and enjoy my meal. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, so I am back with my finished product. These are my homemade black beans made from scratch, and this is it. Just want you to see the consistency of the beans. And I'm just going to have a cup of this. I'm just going to enjoy it just like this. Wanted to also add a quick note, a correction from part 1, when I was given some tips about salting my beans earlier in that video. In part 1, I mentioned that the salt should be added before you add the beans. Salt should be added to the water before you add the beans if you would like your beans to have a firmer, kind of a thicker skin after they're done cooking. And you should add the salt to the water after the beans are finished, not necessarily finished cooking, but after the beans have become tender, like somewhere towards the end of the cooking process. You should add the salt towards the end of the process if you want your beans to have a softer skin. If you don't mind the skin breaking open and having some of the pulp come out into the broth, which is what actually adds this thickness. Do you see that? You see how it's not watery? broth is very thick. Nothing was added into this to get it that way. It's just allowing the beans to cook long enough so that they become soft, and also the skin breaks apart and allows for some of the pulp to fall out of the beans into the broth. So I think I watched that video and I saw that I heard myself say water instead of salt a few times. So just to clarify, to make your beans firmer and to maintain the integrity of the skin and to have the beans not fall apart so much, add your salt at the beginning of the cooking process, preferably when you salt your water before you put the beans in. And if you'd like the beans to have a softer skin and fall apart a little bit more and allow for the pulp to thicken your broth, then you want to add your salt towards the end of the cooking process, somewhere about I do it 30 minutes to an hour before my beans are done, but I make sure that my beans are soft and that they're cooked already. Okay, so just wanted to clear that up. And let me know if you try this at home. Let me know how you prepare them, if you do things a little differently than I do. Let me know how you like to eat your beans, if you eat it by itself like I do. When I first make it, I usually just get a cup and have it like this the first day. And then the next day, throughout the week, I usually, spruce it up with different things like potatoes and rice and things like that. But let me know how you eat your beans if you want to prepare this. And I don't use a lot of spices in my cooking. That's intentional. I'll go into the reason for that in another video. But I intentionally just keep my spices very simple. Mainly, I use salt and pepper in my food, and I season my food with onions. And I know that that seems pretty simple and pretty basic. It's not because I'm afraid of spices or don't like seasoning. I actually do. But it's with intention that I've been cooking that way, and I've actually learned to appreciate the flavor in my food a lot more by just, cutting back and keeping it very bare bones with my spices. So I've learned to appreciate what things taste like. So I've kind of gotten used to eating this way. But if you cook with a lot of spices, let me know how you season your black beans, how you season your beans in general, and let me know how it goes for you if you try it my way. I hope you enjoy your meal. I'm going to enjoy mine. Bye.